The year was 1781. The California sun beat down mercilessly on a dusty trail, where a band of 44 souls, 11 families, walked towards destiny. These brave individuals were the pobladores, a name that whispered townspeople in the Spanish tongue. But their story was anything but ordinary. Traversing more than 1,000 miles across the desert from present-day northern Mexico, they reached a location blessed with a Mediterranean climate, fertile soil, and a river, making it highly suitable for agriculture. Here they founded a farming community, naming it El Pueblo de Nuestra Señora, La Reina de los Ángeles de Porciúncula, which translates to the Town of Our Lady, the Queen of the Angels of Porciúncula in English. Yes, these individuals were the first settlers of Los Angeles. But remarkably, they weren't your typical Spanish settlers. While these pobladores were from the distant provinces of Mexico, historian William M. Mason would later reveal the true racial makeup. Within this group, only 2 were actually classified as white, 16 were mestizos, and a staggering 26 were in fact of African descent. Now you may wonder why there would be a need to emphasize their racial composition. But it is quite an important detail, as back then, racial prejudice was much worse compared to today. Indeed, we can currently classify 56% of Los Angeles founding families as black individuals, but such recognition had not been celebrated publicly for generations. In the 1950s, El Pueblo de Los Angeles State Historic Park honored the city's founders with a plaque. The early settlers of African descent had Spanish surnames, and their ethnicity would not have been known had the plaque not indicated it. But soon enough, the plaque disappeared, with only rumors remaining that several recreation and parks commissioners were embarrassed that black people played a part in the city's founding. Another plaque replaced the original one more than 20 years later, but it didn't mention race in honoring the early settlers. It wasn't until Miriam Matthews, California's first credentialed black librarian, advocated for the pobladores that the city installed another plaque for its bicentennial in 1981. That plaque, a bronze tablet, includes the names of the 44 founders, their race, gender assignment, and age. Of the 11 men representing each of the founding families, Antonio Mesa, Luis Manuel Quintero, Manuel Camero, and José Cesario Moreno were of African descent, according to historical research. Without Miriam Matthews, the Dean of Los Angeles Black History, as many rightfully lauded her, these names might have remained lost in the annals of time. But thanks to her dedication, the forgotten melody of the pobladores could once again be heard, which is why we wish to acknowledge her as we present the untold black history within the booming city of Los Angeles. Truly remarkable tales such as these mustn't be forgotten. We must warn you, however, that this is not just a simple story of history, but also a story of a long fight for recognition and respect. Tread carefully, as some of these information can be heavy on the heart. That said, we humbly encourage you to give us a like to show your support and click subscribe so you'd be able to join us in our other insightful discussions. With this, let's proceed. Known for its glittering sunshine, star-studded industry, and simmering pot of cultures, Los Angeles is a glamorous city that pulsates with life and dreams. But truth be told, it wasn't always this way. It has certainly had many disturbing moments of black prejudice, ironically so. The ones that we will mention in this video might even enrage you. And similar to most thriving areas of civilization, Los Angeles too had a historical tale of war and quest for power and wealth. After the pobladores had fully settled in the new land, the pueblo grew slowly over the next decades as they focused on agriculture and cattle ranching. By 1820, its population had grown to approximately 650 residents, and it was by 1821 that Los Angeles became a part of Mexico, following the Mexican War of Independence. However, this reign came to an abrupt end following the American conquest of California, which was part of the larger Mexican-American War. The last Mexican governor of California, Pío Pico, was of mixed Spanish, Native American, and African ancestry. With this in mind, it's truly unfortunate that many white Southerners who soon came to California during its gold rush era in 1848 brought racist attitudes and ideals with them. This pervasive racism ended up hindering the growth of the black community in Los Angeles, with only a dozen black residents recorded in 1850. And while we can agree that this detail is already quite troublesome, the tales of the California gold rush were also similarly disturbing. This era of loot lust, sparked by the 1848 discovery of gold at Sutter's Mill, ended up triggering a massive influx of approximately 300,000 people from across the globe, a sudden population boom that stimulated the American economy and propelled California towards statehood. It was during this era that Los Angeles had also started to thrive. However, it also had devastating consequences for native Californians, leading to a significant decline in their population due to poor living conditions and systematic violence. Bless their souls. Economy-wise, the California gold rush seemed like a good thing, but its real consequences were quite unsettling, for it attracted many hearts who would do ungodly things for fortune. This would later impact the lives of many more, especially our black brothers and sisters at the time. Fortunately, many still did not stray in faith, as during 1872, the First African Methodist Episcopal Church of Los Angeles was established under the sponsorship of Biddy Mason, an African-American nurse and a California real estate entrepreneur and philanthropist, and her son-in-law Charles Owens. Currently, the church now has a membership of more than 19,000 individuals. In 1880, with the construction of the Santa Fe Railroad and a subsequent surge in settlement, the number of black residents in Los Angeles increased, and by 1900, 2,131 African Americans lived in Los Angeles, making it the second largest black population in California at the time. This population would come to grow massively as the years go by. The promise of a brighter future in Los Angeles attracted a wave of African Americans in the 20th century, joining other diverse groups who flocked to the city after the Southern Pacific Railroad connected it to the rest of the United States. In 1910, the one-story wood-frame 51st Street School became the first all-black school built in Los Angeles. It hired white teachers because discriminatory hiring kept black teachers out of many cities in the state, including Los Angeles. The year after it was built, Bessie Brewington Burke became the school's first black teacher and 8 years later, the school's first black principal. By 1920, the black population in Los Angeles had grown significantly, drawn by the allure of opportunity. However, their dreams of a better life clashed with the harsh reality of escalating racial hostility. Citywide policies systematically eroded black rights, while the Ku Klux Klan and police brutality terrorized their communities, causing immense suffering and disillusionment. Black communities were systematically marginalized by local authorities, resulting in dilapidated infrastructure, substandard transportation, inadequate schools and parks, and restricted access to economic and educational resources. Truly, it is quite disheartening to hear about such oppressions experienced by African Americans in a city whose initial settlers were of African descent. And regrettably, pain has a tendency to stack over time, especially if it is not addressed or resolved. All of this oppression soon transformed into a heavy grudge, with great consequences. Just observe these following developments that we are about to reveal, and in the end, you will see how deep this has truly become. During the Great Depression, Los Angeles experienced a rapid growth in its black population, particularly in what is now referred to as historic South Central. Faced with economic hardships and pervasive racial discrimination in the southern states, many black individuals and families proceeded to seek better opportunities elsewhere. By the 1930s, the approximately 40,000 black residents were primarily concentrated in two neighborhoods, known today as South Park and Watts. Despite the black population reaching nearly 65,000, equivalent to about 4.27% of the total population in 1940, restrictive covenants hindered their ability to move into new areas. Still, the expansion of Los Angeles's black community accelerated during the war years, fueled by significant migration from the American South and Midwest, and drawn by the robust job opportunities in war-related industries. By 1950, the black population in Los Angeles was approaching 200,000, with the South Central to Watts corridor becoming predominantly black. And by 1960, the black population in Los Angeles had grown to nearly 350,000, as black families moved into areas previously dominated by white residents. However, despite the increasing black population, racial tensions in Southern California continued to escalate, as evidenced by the Watts Rebellion of 1965. Now, this story is far from simple. The Watts Rebellion started after a Los Angeles police officer pulled over a young man named Marquette Fry. It began as a traffic stop for suspicion of driving under the influence, but the situation escalated quite too quickly. I remember that they took him and threw him in the car like a bag of laundry and kicked his feet in and slammed the door, an eyewitness told the Los Angeles Times. As it escalated, onlookers grew increasingly apprehensive as the police became more aggressive. This led to the arrest and attack of not only Marquette Fry, but also several members of the Fry family who attempted to intervene and assist him. Witnessing this harshness, a growing crowd of onlookers became increasingly agitated, sparking 6 days of unrest that resulted in 34 deaths, over 1,000 injuries, 4,000 arrests, and $40 million in property damage. The devastating aftermath saw plummeting real estate values and numerous businesses destroyed, leaving a deep scar on the community. Despite the progress achieved during the civil rights era in 1954 to 1968, the legacy of systemic racism and discrimination continued to affect black communities in Los Angeles. As the black population expanded into predominantly white neighborhoods across much of southwestern Los Angeles, new barriers and restrictions were quickly set up. This made segregation worse as the black community continued to grow. By 1970, Los Angeles' black population had reached almost 500,000 people. The ramping up of restrictions to black residency peaked around 1968 when civil rights legislation finally started working to eliminate these barriers. As a result, this era was the low point for integration and the high point of black ghettoization in Los Angeles. Around 1980, Los Angeles' black population reached its high point at just over 500,000. Thanks to civil rights legislation and litigation, black Angelenos were finally allowed to move to all parts of the city where they could afford to buy or rent. Segregation decreased slightly, and very few neighborhoods remained without black families. And as a side note, like we mentioned earlier, it was then in 1981 that Miriam Matthews encouraged widespread acknowledgement of Los Angeles's African roots. By 1990, only a few areas were without black residents in Los Angeles. At this time, Crenshaw District had become the new heart of black Los Angeles. Now, with what we just enumerated, did you notice the problem? The reality is, the pervasive systemic racism and discrimination faced by black communities in Los Angeles persisted despite the continuous growth of black individuals populating the city's areas. If you had experienced the exact same thing that they experienced, what would you do? Would you still sit quietly? All of these inevitably led to the Los Angeles Uprising, as this is what happens when individuals are made to feel like society mistreats them and undermines their opportunities for a better life. At that point, the city's minority communities harbored a deep-rooted mistrust of the predominantly white police force. These fears were tragically realized in 1991 when a bystander's video captured the brutal beating of Rodney King, an African-American motorist, by Los Angeles police officers. The grainy footage, broadcast across the nation, sparked outrage and protests. A year later, emotions were still raw as the officers stood trial in Simi Valley. The jury's acquittal on almost all charges ignited a powder keg of frustration and anger. Protesters filled the streets, their cries of "no justice, no peace" echoing through the city. The unrest escalated rapidly, morphing into a maelstrom of violence, looting, and arson. The epicenter was south-central Los Angeles, but the chaos spread like wildfire, engulfing neighborhoods from the San Fernando Valley to Long Beach. Television screens flickered with horrifying images. Reginald Denny, a white truck driver, attacked at the intersection of Florence and Normandy. Firefighters battling blazes under sniper fire. The city was paralyzed by fear and fury. Mayor Tom Bradley declared a state of emergency, and National Guard troops were deployed to quell the unrest. President George Bush sent in federal troops and declared Los Angeles a disaster area. Rodney King himself pleaded for peace, his poignant question, "Can we get along?" echoing the desperate yearning for reconciliation. But the damage was done. More than 50 lives were lost, thousands injured, and the city lay in ruins. Why can't we get along? Even after so many years of oppression and countless attempts to address the issue, these problems remain as there are those who do not seek for a change of heart. There are those who refuse to change their perspectives and embrace empathy. Fast forward to the 2000s, these issues are still very much alive. If we look at the bigger picture, despite overall improvements in socio-economic outcomes for black Californians since 2000, significant racial inequality persists, especially compared to white Californians. The latest report by UCLA's Black Policy Project reveals a widening gap in several areas, including home ownership, income, and educational attainment. This disparity is particularly pronounced in major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Oakland, Sacramento, San Francisco, and San Jose, largely due to factors like gentrification and rising housing costs. It has gotten so terrible that closing the racial gap between black and white Californians would take over 248 years, as said by Michael Stoll, faculty director of the Black Policy Project, in the 2024 State of Black California report. Since the previous report back in 2000, California's black population has experienced its first decline in decades, shrinking from 2.2 million to 2.1 million, and dropping from 6.6% to 5.6% of the state's total population. It's ridiculous in its truest sense that the decline in black home ownership between 2000 and 2020 in this area was nearly 6%, while other ethnic groups did not experience the same decrease over the same period. Zooming back in to present Los Angeles, the City of Angels shines bright, but shadows still linger over the black community. Finding homes, good jobs, and schools that nurture dreams are still a struggle. And even those sworn to protect can cause fear instead of safety. A 2023 annual country report shows that black residents in Los Angeles were the target of 46% of hate crimes, despite making up only 9% of the population. When will this change? And is it too late for change? Like a flower pushing through concrete, hope persists in the hearts of many black individuals longing for a better life. From the fight for civil rights to the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement, the black community has had a long tradition of overcoming adversity and fighting for change. Let their stories inspire us all to work towards a future where Los Angeles is truly a city of opportunity for everyone. Thank you for watching this video about the brief history of the black community in Los Angeles, including their struggles. If you found this content valuable and want to stay informed, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you have any thoughts, experiences, or extra knowledge you wish to share, please leave a comment below. Let's continue the discussion as we look forward to a more just and equitable future for everyone in Los Angeles and Greater California.